There's a rumor going around. If you like this video and subscribe, you can unlock Ultra Instinct. Hi guys, this is the next part of What If Broly Was Reincarnated in the World of Naruto. I hope you enjoy. Broly, Jaby, and Esumi are walking towards the academy like good little students. Jaby and Esumi appeared to look a little ragged, as if they didn't get much sleep that night for some reason. Esumi is reasonably irritated about not having enough beauty sleep and is on the lookout for a potential target to unleash her pent-up rage upon. Jaby is just constantly yawning while Broly has his same old bored look upon his face. A sudden yell is heard nearby and a middle-aged man comes into the middle of the street with half of his body covered in orange paint. A sudden movement is seen from where the man came from. That'll teach you to be mean to me. I'm the greatest prankster ever who will also become the greatest Hokage ever. Believe it. A young immature boastful voice yells out. Broly stops and stares at the boy for a second before continuing his way towards the academy. Esumi and Jaby were slightly confused because not much catches Aomatsuna's attention unless it's related to training or eating. Their gazes also lingered upon the child longer than Broly's did. The boy somehow notices the three kids gaze upon him and chases after them. Haha, I bet you guys were pretty impressed with that prank I just did on that guy, aren't ya? The orange jumpsuit wearing kid assumes. Sure. Now buzz off while we continue on our way to school. Esumi dismisses the boy easily. Oh yeah, I forgot about class today. Hehehe, thanks for reminding me. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. And I'm going to become the Hokage. That's great and all, but I didn't ask. Esumi says, slightly more annoyed. Why do you want to become Hokage, Uzumaki-san? Jaby asks curiously. Because everyone respects the Hokage and loves him and he's the strongest person in the village. Naruto answers enthusiastically. So you simply want to become respected, loved, and strong. Jaby questions once again. I want everyone to look up to me and treat me with respect. Naruto says loudly. Are you aware, Uzumaki-san, that there is more to being Hokage than simply being the strongest and most respected in the village? Jaby asks. What do ya mean? Naruto questions curiously. Drop it, Jaby. We've arrived. Naruto, if you want to know more, come to the library after school. Broly says. Broly, Jaby, and Esumi went to the seats they claimed yesterday and noticed no one sat in them today. Good thing you bastards learned your lesson from yesterday. I'm in a particularly bad mood today and I'm just hoping someone comes along and tries to make it worse for me. Esumi smiled. Broly propped his feet on his desk and took out a book about the taijutsu styles and kenjutsu styles of Konoha. And waited for the teacher to start class. Esumi saw Broly do this and decided to also prop her feet on the desk and look towards the students in a threatening and baiting way. Jaby just took out his book about herbs and medicines in Konoha and started to read it. Soon the teachers came and class started. Today class we will be having our first traditional shinobi spar, to gauge where you are at in physical abilities. But before that we will do warm-up exercises and then teach you how to throw kunai and shuriken properly. After that I will teach you more about the history of Konoha. The children were initially excited about actually doing something today, then they heard about history, it dampened their spirits. At the end of class, Iruka motioned for everyone to follow him outside and then gave the lead to Mizuki for the physical portion of today. Okay kids, start by stretching and then we'll get into the warm-ups. Esumi came towards Broly and motioned for him to bring his head down so she can whisper something into his ear. Do you want us to do this or wait for when we get into the forest later to start training? Esumi asks. Broly looks towards Mizuki and then back at Esumi. While this won't be much of a warm-up for what I have you two do, I don't want this insect to bother me. So just do as he says. Broly says. After the students were done stretching, Mizuki ordered them to do 20 jumping jacks, 20 push-ups, and 20 sit-ups. Esumi and Jaby stared at their fellow peers in slight disbelief. Is it just me or are the other kids kind of weak? Esumi whispers to Jaby. Jaby takes a second look at his classmates and nods. Do. 2. Aomatsuna-sama's training, we have become way stronger than our peers, Jaby explains. Esumi thinks about the training Broly put them through for 3 years and nods her head. Yeah, I definitely don't see these kids making it past day 2 of his training. I doubt any of them could even climb one of the trees in the forest. Esumi states. Alright everyone up. Come and learn about how to throw and hold a kunai and shuriken properly. The students all get up, with a majority of them being tired except a select few to learn from Mizuki. Mizuki goes through the ways to hold and throw both weapons 3 times and then asks if anyone has any questions. All the children shook their heads no and were just excited to get started on throwing these dangerous steel weapons already. Since it's the first time most of you will be using a kunai or shuriken, we will be watching you like a hawk. I will pass them out to you all in a second, so line up in a straight and orderly fashion, then get to throwing how I taught you. Mizuki ordered. The children lined up and started to throw the kunai and shurikens Mizuki gave them when it was their turn, while Iruka wrote down how the students did just like he was doing earlier. It was Jaby's turn to try, and he stepped up to the area where he is supposed to throw the weapons. Jaby felt everyone's eyes on him and suddenly started shaking. Esumi was about to say something until she felt Broly's hand grab her shoulder. Jaby suddenly felt killing intent pierce right through him and caused him to shake even more. A few children started to laugh, and in the midst of their laughter they heard two thunk sounds. Iruka smiled at Jaby and congratulated him on hitting the target perfectly. Mizuki looked at the roundish boy in complete disbelief. He quickly calmed himself and considered it to be luck. Jaby moved towards the other area where the students that have already finished are waiting. Wow, how did you hit the target when you were shaking harder than a leaf in a storm? A ponytail wearing blonde girl asks in disbelief. Jaby backed up a bit and then murmured something. The girl didn't hear him and decided to get closer. What did you say? The girl asks in a louder voice. Jaby starts to sweat a little bit more than he already had due to his earlier performance. He was about to open his mouth until a boy wearing a jacket that reaches up to his midriff and also has a ponytail with black hair grabbed the girl's shoulder. Leave the poor guy alone, can't you see you're bothering him? The boy says, what would you know, Shikamaru? Maybe he's just flustered about how pretty I am. The girl shouts, troublesome. Shikamaru whispers under his breath and he walks away. But the girl doesn't just let him walk away and follows him while yelling at him. Broly and Esumi just got done with their throws and scored the same as Jaby did. Soon after the entire class got done with their throwing, it was time for the sparring. Mizuki led the kids towards the sparring area. Before we begin the sparring, there are rules. Every spar begins with a seal of confrontation and ends with a seal of reconciliation. Mizuki and Iruka demonstrate both signs to the students. Iruka will call out 2 random names and we will continue until everyone has sparred, then we will go back into the classroom. Iruka cleared his throat and began calling out names of the students. Broly, Esumi, and Jaby watched their fellow peers spar. Broly felt disappointment at not being able to find a challenge, or anyone entertaining to possibly fight so far. Esumi was inwardly sneering at how weak her fellow classmates were compared to her. Jaby somehow took out his book from earlier, without anyone noticing, and started to read. Aomatsuna Hakuseki and Shino Aburame, Broly and a boy in a long jacket that covered up to his neck and the top of his legs walked up. They both made the seal of confrontation and Mizuki started the battle. But neither combatants moved. Broly stared at the boy across from him and Shino did the same back towards him. An actual insect. A real bug. Broly started to laugh at the irony of this situation, unnerving some of his classmates before realizing this is the first time they heard him speak. A sudden buzzing sound started to accumulate in volume near Shino. I surrender. My insects are too afraid to go near him and I am not nearly strong enough to combat him. Shino explains. Iruka just nods while Broly is slightly irritated at the fact that he won't actually be able to squash an actual bug person. Yada Esumi and Choji Akamichi, our tiny blue-haired glasses-wearing demoness walked towards the middle of the sparring area with a boy almost the size of Jaby wearing a green jacket with a white scarf around his neck and a yellow shirt with brown shorts. Mizuki waved the signal to start and Esumi just smirked at the boy. Hey, aren't ya gonna start? Why don't you come at me? Give me everything you got and more. Choji was slightly unnerved by the confidence in her voice but ran towards her in an incredibly slow manner that was even worse than the average academy student. Esumi just yawned and then smiled while holding her hands on her hips. Choji was losing more confidence by the second until he heard a loud voice. Kick her butt, Choji. Teach her you're nothing to mess with. The yellow pony-tailed girl cheered. It appeared to have worked as the round-built boy increased his speed and reared his fist back. I won't let you down, Ino. Choji yelled as he punched towards Esumi's face with no more hesitation left in him. Suddenly a large smack was heard and the students gasped as they saw what happened. Choji had a large foot mark on his face and he was disorientated. What happened? Choji asks to no one in particular. Esumi grinned. You closed your eyes, fatty. The previously dizzied boy suddenly became furious and focused. I'm not fat. I'm big boned. He charges towards Esumi once again but in a manner of a raging bull. Esumi laughed loudly and watched at the boy's attempt to grab her. Esumi swiftly kicked the boy on the other side of his cheek and waited to see if he would stop again, but the raging boy continued to attempt the grasp at even a sleeve to grab upon. Esumi easily dodged him while laying on constant kicks upon his body for each failed attempt he made. The students looked in awe while Shikamaru and Ino just looked in concern and slight anger. Choji was quickly tiring out of his raged state and tried to grab the very agile girl once more. And to reward his efforts was a hard side kick into the jaw, knocking him out. Esumi laughed. You need to work on your stamina, fatty. Jaby could last longer than that when he was 6. Esumi skipped towards Broly and Jaby with an innocent and relieved smile on her face like she just let off some steam that she really needed to get rid of. Slightly terrifying the rest of the students and causing some to look at her in anger. Esumi-chan, please remember this is just sparring and there is no need to go so far with your classmates. Iruka-sensei lectured her. To respond to this, Esumi just snorted and looked away. Iruka sighed and then continued to call the students' names to spar until he finally called another member of the trio of demons. Amai, Jaby and Shikamaru Nara. The gentle demon slowly walked up towards the middle of the sparring area along with the black-haired boy who was yawning on his way there. Mizuki waved his hand downward to signal the boys to start and Jaby immediately got into an attacking stance and rushed towards Shikamaru in a speed that caught everyone including the teachers in surprise. Shikamaru's eyes immediately widened and his face turned serious. But before he could get into a fighting stance he found himself suddenly off his feet and staring at the clouds while everything started to slow down. I guess I shouldn't have underestimated my opponent. Even if he looks similar to my friend. The Nara heir thought before he closed his eyes and went unconscious. Jaby just bowed towards the boy and then quickly returned towards Broly and Esumi's side. Iruka was slightly irritated and unnerved about the strength the last two students of his shown. He decided to go to the Hokage and ask him some questions before deciding if it was a good idea to keep these two here to spar with the other students. Jaby was secretly nervous about whether or not he was going to get reprimanded like Esumi did when she knocked her opponent out. And just as he suspected and feared, Iruka looked right towards him with his eyes soaked still in a little bit of disbelief in the amount of skill this boy shown with his physique. Jaby-kun, I'm going to give you the same warning I gave Esumi. So remember for next time. He warned lightly. Broly stood in front of Jaby and stared right into Iruka's eyes. Bug-sensei, I disagree with your methods of training. Broly said in displeasure. All the students freaked out at what Broly called their teacher and started to get excited in wondering how Iruka would respond to this declaration. Iruka's eyebrows twitched and he thought he misheard what the boy called him. Aomatsuna-kun, please stay after class to talk to me in private. But for now we will continue with class. Iruka said, dashing the hopes of the students who hoped anything exciting would happen between Broly and Iruka. So the spars continued until the last two students were called. Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, the orange jumpsuit wearing boy met with a black-haired boy, wearing a blue turtleneck shirt with a red and white fan on the back of it. They did the seals before Mizuki started the match. The match was rather lackluster and quick. Not to say anyone expected any different outcome due to the famous reputation of the Uchiha clan. Sasuke won the match by using superior taijutsu than the spiky blonde-haired boy and restrained him. Iruka smiled at the outcome because he didn't need to have someone take another student on the second day of school to the nurse's office. After school, Iruka's eyes twitched in annoyance as he looked upon the trio of demons in his office. One with an attitude that just didn't care about him, another with an attitude of superiority to him, and the last one with a feeling of suppressed annoyance. So Aomatsuna-kun, do you want to explain why you feel that the way I conduct the spars between academy students is incorrect or why they would cause you to disagree with them? Iruka asked in a slightly pissed voice but still professional-like. You will only breed weaklings and spineless cowards with the way you train. Broly responds in slight disgust. And how is that, Aomatsuna-kun? You can't just claim something like that without having some sort of proof or example. Iruka sensibly said, look at these two compared to our entire class. The training I gave them made them superior than anyone in our class. Broly explains. This gave Iruka a little bit of a stump because he couldn't really disprove Aomatsuna's claim except in one way. Aomatsuna-kun, the school year just started. And we haven't tested any of you on anything to prove if you three are smarter than the rest of the students. Iruka explained. To this response, Broly just softly sighed, causing Esumi to giggle and Iruka to twitch his eyebrows even more. Please explain what you mean then, Aomatsuna-kun. If that's not what you meant, I meant that they aren't useless cowards who won't run away from the real life of a shinobi. Becoming a ninja for this village isn't as bright as it looks, and they understand that. Broly explains. How exactly would you be able to prove this statement then, Aomatsuna-kun? Iruka suddenly smiled deviously. This statement caused Broly's eye to twitch slightly in annoyance. Fine. I've gone off topic anyway. You should have the students take their sparring and training as seriously as you can. The moment they enrolled into a school for shinobi, the moment they gave up a majority of their childhood and childishness. They are training to become soldiers and weapons. Peace is slowly weakening this village. Broly then takes off with Esumi and Jaby. Iruka's face turned dark. He then sighed and body flickered off towards the Hokage office. At the Hokage office, he told you this on his own terms? Hiruzen asks in slight disbelief. Yes, Lord Hokage. Iruka says. All have to talk to the boy to hear more of his ideas. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. You're dismissed. Maybe the boy is right about how we are getting weaker. None of the Jonin really train or attempt to challenge themselves anymore except for Guy. While the Anbu probably only trains because we make them. I probably let my old bones rust from lack of use. The old Hokage laughs to himself. It appears I should have a meeting about this with the council and clan heads. After I have a quick workout with Guy-san. I hope I don't regret this. Hiruzen whispers to himself. At the library, hey Esumi-chan. Jaby-kun. How did you two get so strong? Naruto asks loudly. Esumi sighs at the lack of volume control this kid has. Uzumaki-san, we are in a library, that means you have to whisper or talk as low as you possibly can. Jaby explains. Naruto quickly puts his hand over his mouth and shakes his head up and down at Jaby. The librarian lady was constantly staring towards their group for some reason, and it was making Esumi quite annoyed and angry. Jaby just ignored her, and Naruto was looking guilty for some reason. It appears her vigilance paid off and she quickly walked towards the three. She was about to reach them before Broly walked in front of her holding 5 scrolls of E-rank jutsus. He stared her down with his eyes, daring her to say something towards him and his group. She audibly gulped as she felt the pressure this boy was pressing down upon her, and decided it was in her best interests to give up on her plan and walk back behind the counter. Naruto looked amazed, while Esumi and Jaby looked as if it was nothing out of the ordinary. The group of 4 walked towards the shinobi checkout and met with a one-armed man behind the counter. Broly pulled out a card with his photo on it and gave it to the man along with the 5 scrolls. You kids are getting a head start on your studies, are ya? Broly, Esumi, and Jaby ignored the man as he swiped Broly's card. You bet, old timer. Me and my new friends are gonna pass the academy easy peasy once we master these jutsus. Naruto explains. The man smiled at the young child's positive charisma. Haha, most students don't ever come to the library in their entire shinobi career. I'm glad you guys are taking advantage of the resources you have, to do the best you can. Some people say that reading is boring, but don't ever forget that knowledge is the greatest weapon a shinobi can have. If I had a bit more in this noggin of mine, I would have never lost this. He waves his stump around for the kids to see, only getting a giggle from Esumi and a shocked reaction from Naruto. He finishes checking out Broly's ID and the group of 4 start walking towards the weapon shop from yesterday. Along the way there, Naruto decides to ask Broly a question. Hey Aomatsuna-kun, why are you so quiet all the time? There is no reason to talk all the time. Broly answers. Oh, but don't you get bored if you don't ever talk or ignored? Naruto asks. If I get bored, I train, and if I get ignored, I make them regret even thinking about ignoring me. What if that gets boring? Naruto asks once again. Training will never be boring. Gaining strength to crush weaklings and warriors alike will always satisfy me. It's in my blood. Broly explains. Why do you have a monkey's tail? Are you part monkey? Naruto asks innocently, causing Esumi and Jaby to look slightly shocked at the kid's courage to insult Broly to his face. Naruto, I am no more monkey than you are a fox. Broly says cryptically. Naruto just tilted his head while Esumi and Jaby also looked confused. You didn't answer my question. Naruto says, a little upset. I've answered enough questions. We'll talk more after we get some supplies from this shop. As the 4 demons reached the shop, they met with the shopkeeper from last time. Did the seals work or not, brats? Did they have some sort of side effect? The shopkeeper asks rapidly. We'll talk Friday. For now we're here for other purposes. I need another gravity seal. Broly says. So it does work fine. Why would you want more if it caused some sort of damage or weird effect? the shopkeeper says in glee. To this response Broly uncurls his tail he had hidden underneath his sash when he entered the shop and showed it to the excited man whose face quickly turned horrified and distraught. He drooped his head at the loss of money he could have made with the gravity seals. He took out a box filled with them and gave them to the boy. Esumi, Jaby, and Naruto were chuckling softly in amusement at how Broly was taking advantage of this shopkeeper who hasn't done his research on one of the village demons. Broly took the box and walked out with his chuckling entourage behind him. Once they left the store entirely, Naruto busted out laughing while falling on his behind and pointing towards the shop. Esumi laughed while holding her stomach at the dumb shopkeeper. Broly ignored them and started walking towards their training ground. The three giggling children followed behind him while still laughing from time to time. The four demons walked into the forest clearing that three of them are clearly very used to. They stood in a circle as Broly handed out gravity seals to Esumi, Jaby, and Naruto. Naruto saw Esumi place hers on her stomach underneath her shirt while Jaby placed his on his neck. Naruto tried to place his on his forehead but couldn't figure out how to make it stick. Surge your chakra through the seal to make it stick, Broly explained. Naruto did as Broly said and yelled in surprise. Why the heck is it so hard to move around? Naruto questioned while trying to take the seal back off. But the seal slowly sunk into his forehead as it did with Jaby's neck and Esumi's stomach. The only evidence that the seal was ever there was the kanji on his forehead that said resistance. Uzumaki-san, did you just place a seal on yourself without asking any sort of questions about what it could be or what it could possibly do? Jaby asks quite shocked. Well, I saw you guys doing it. And you're my friends, so why wouldn't I do what you do? Naruto explained. I guess that makes sense in your own special way. Esumi says almost as shocked as Jaby. To this response, Naruto just smiled and nodded. Esumi, Jaby is the first level difficult? Broly asks. They shake their heads and Broly orders them to increase it 2 more times. Broly increased his to level 5 once he got used to level 3 from yesterday and felt like he was in a world of mud that he constantly has to move through. They did as Broly said and immediately fell off. Naruto tried to do the same as they did, but Broly grabbed his arm and just shook his head. You need to get used to level 1 first, Naruto. Once you find you have no problem moving your body and chakra like you usually do, then you can move on to the next level. These seals increase the amount of resistance your body faces. It also affects your chakra network system as well. It makes it harder to use your chakra like you're used to. I see. So these seals make our body and chakra stronger and more resilient against change. Jaby explains. Broly just nods his head. And we just acquired a whole box full of these seals. If we ever reach the last level of one seal, we can just slap on another seal to make us even stronger. We should have zero problems becoming the strongest shinobi in the world with these seals as long as we keep training like we usually do. Esumi says in a rare show of excitement with her high-pitched voice. Let's get to training for today. No warm-up today. We're only gonna have enough time for learning these techniques before it gets dark. Broly says as he takes out the 5 scrolls and passes them around. Choose which one you want to start with, and switch once you get the hang of it. We'll continue practicing these until I say we stop. Broly grabs the scroll with the body replacement technique on it, Naruto grabs the transformation technique, Esumi grabs the rope escape technique and the cloak of invisibility technique, and Jaby grabs the clone jutsu technique. The group began practicing the jutsus they grabbed and struggled quite a bit doing these very easy jutsus. Why is this so hard to do, Aomatsuna? Naruto asks as he created another misshapen version of their sensei. Because the resistance seals also affect your chakra network, making it harder to gather the right amount of chakra necessary for techniques. It's constantly working against you and it's up to you to defeat it and take control over your chakra. Broly explains. I'll teach my chakra to not listen to me. Believe it, Naruto says confidently and continues to practice the transformation technique. Broly throws another log in the air and attempts to latch onto it with his chakra, but once again fails to keep it connected after he tries to switch with it. If touching it isn't enough, I'll just have to wrap my chakra around it. Broly says to himself. Esumi is unable to start her 2 techniques because she needs rope and some sort of cloak or cloth, so she goes towards Broly and attempts the body replacement technique along with him after reading the scroll. She throws her sheath in the air and go through the necessary hand seals and finds herself still on the ground next to Broly. She smiles embarrassed and quickly goes to pick up her fallen sheath to try again. She tries again, but this time throws it straight up in the air and once again goes through the necessary hand seals, but this time finds herself falling towards the ground. She was about to cheer in excitement but quickly realized now wasn't the time for such and used the body replacement technique once again on the sheet to arrive safely on the ground. She grinned as she noticed Broly looking at her with a face that confused her. How did you manage to keep your chakra connected enough to finish the technique? Broly questions. Simple, my dear boy, I just covered the whole object in my chakra. She smiled as she said this. Broly just nodded and attempted once more with a thrown log, but this time he succeeded and appeared quite high up in the air. Everyone watched the tail boy fall from a high height and crash with a boom towards the ground. Wow, that can be a whole attack on its own with how strong you are, Aomatsuna-kun. Naruto exclaimed. We can do the same thing once we get far enough in levels with our seals. Jaby tells the young blonde Jinchuriki. When Jaby said this, both Esumi and Naruto cheered. Esumi slightly blushed at realizing she copied the spiky-haired boy's mannerisms. Jaby appeared to have mastered the clone technique by creating 3 perfect copies of himself and started to read the transformation scroll. Eventually all 4 demons learned the jutsus except for Broly and Naruto being unable to do the clone jutsu. Without knowing the reason why he was unable to get the clone technique caused Broly to be slightly annoyed, and Naruto somehow sensed this and patted Broly on the back. Don't be so down, Aomatsuna-kun, we can just ask Gigi why we can't use the clone jutsu. Naruto exclaims. Broly just looks at the young fox carrier and nods. It couldn't hurt to have a more knowledgeable input about this situation. Broly tells Jaby and Esumi to head home without him while he and Naruto head towards the Hokage Tower while it is getting late. In the Hokage's tower, Gigi. Why can't I do this stupid clone technique? It doesn't matter how much chakra I use for it, it just makes a stupid clone of me. Naruto says angrily. Hiruzen looks at the 2 young boys with a slight smile. It seems Aomatsuna will find his bond to the village through Naruto if we're lucky. The Hokage clears his throat and is about to talk before he notices words on Naruto's forehead. His face slightly darkens before he asks the boy a question. Naruto-kun, why is the word resistance on your forehead in kanji? Are you learning how to write kanji, boy? Hiruzen questions. The boy looks towards Broly before seeing him nod his head at him, causing the young fox carrier to smile. Haha, Gigi, this old thing is how I'm gonna take that hat of yours even faster. Naruto explains. Oh, and what does it do, Naruto-kun? Hiruzen questions. This thingy makes it harder to do stuff. Naruto says while smiling and leaving the Hokage nowhere closer to getting the answer he wants. Broly smirks at Naruto's answer. It's called a gravity seal, old man. What it does is exactly what Naruto said it does. But back to the question. Why can't I pull off this clone jutsu? Broly asks, ignoring the Hokage's curiosity towards the seal. Hiruzen coughs to clear his throat and says, show me what you're doing first. Broly and Naruto both do the hand seals for the clone jutsu, and then 2 sickly and idiotic versions of the boys appear. Well, Aomatsuna-kun and Naruto-kun, that's because you 2 don't have enough chakra control for the technique, it seems. Hiruzen says as if upset at that fact. Broly just stares at the old man as he remembered that the chakra control techniques in the library are only for genin and above. Are you gonna teach us some of that then, Gigi? Naruto asks excitedly. Hiruzen shows the boy a pained smile as he realizes he won't be able to change the shinobi school system this year due to the civilian council always interfering when the young Jinchuriki is involved. They would definitely question why he would want to make changes when nothing of importance towards the safety and strength of his village is at stake. I'm definitely going to have to get the civilian council out of my shinobi matters. I don't know what I was thinking back then letting them talk me into this. Hiruzen thinks while sighing. Unfortunately, my boy, I can't teach you chakra control techniques, Hiruzen says sadly. This caused Naruto to feel a little depressed. But I can give you 2 advice on how to find out ways to learn them. The wily old Hokage says before grinning, causing Naruto to feel excited about being able to learn something from his Gigi even if it is indirectly. Broly just continued to stare at the foolish old man before also waiting to hear how he was going to learn these chakra control techniques. While I can't teach you 2 chakra control techniques, no one ever said you can't ask other people who aren't me to teach you chakra control techniques. Hiruzen grins. But why can't you just teach us though, and instead we have to be all sneaky about it? The curious fox carrier asks logically. Hiruzen is momentarily shocked at the boy asking the question and smiles. Treat it as a super secret ninja mission, Naruto-kun. Ninjas have to be sneaky with both words and their actions. Hokage tells the boy, "Alright Gigi, watch me become the most secretive ninja ever. Oh, and learn those control techniques for my lame chakra," Naruto exclaims. Broly just nods at the Hokage and walks out the Hokage tower with Naruto. The two boys began walking down the dark street before noticing all the stares they were getting. Broly just whispered something about worms and Naruto started to feel slightly guilty walking along with Broly. "Hey Aomatsuna-kun, I'll see you tomorrow and we can ask about chakra control then," Naruto says awkwardly before taking off. "Are you going to come out yourselves or do you want me to drag you out screaming and broken into pieces?" Broly asks to a suddenly silent dark road. Three figures came out of the dead of night and stand directly across from the young legendary Saiyan. "You might want to stop associating with that boy. For your own good," one of the men said. "Yeah, and if you continue to hang out with the fox brat, we know a certain someone that could help us figure out how to deal with a monkey," the second lanky one said in a whimsical tone. "Her name rhymes with Madeira," the buffest of the three said in a gruff tone. Suddenly a dangerous glint flashed across the tailed boy's eyes and a large amount of killing intent started to bombard the three boys. They suddenly started to shake in fear before looking again towards who they were facing and noticed a devilish grin sported on his face. "You're gonna regret resisting, B-boy," the tallest and lankiest one said while still shaking. The three boys dash towards the weaponless 8-year-old and watch as he does nothing while they move towards him but smile. Suddenly his smile freezes and turns into a grimace. "I nearly forgot that the old man warned me about crushing these bugs too harshly or that damn civilian council will get involved. No, he said against civilians. And these three fools are definitely genin with their headbands still out. Looks like I can finally see the results of my training." As the three boys tried to attack Broly at the same time, the boy looks at his arm with some weird kanji sketched onto it and smiles before dodging their attacks. The boys stop attacking at the same time and switched it up once they noticed their first attempt wasn't working so well. The large boy attempted to grab the agile boy, before hearing a crack sound and looking towards it. Once he noticed his broken wrist he was about to scream until a foot smashed directly in his face knocking him away down the street unconscious. "That worm got off lucky. You two won't be nearly as lucky as he is," Broly said before charging towards the skinny genin. The lanky boy in question nearly shat his pants in fear from the killing intent and ability this boy has. He attempted to elbow the rushing Saiyan child, with his eyes closed, before feeling a hand grab his stomach and lift him in the air, smashing him into the ground. With a crash his eyes widen on impact, he tried to move but he suddenly felt a hand grab his face and start running it through the concrete road with a maniacal laugh. He fainted halfway through the assault on his body and skull and the remaining genin was frozen in terror. He saw the tailed boy throw his severely beaten and bruised friend towards him. He wanted to dodge but his body couldn't move. He tried his hardest to move until he decisively bit his tongue hard and rolled out of the way. His friend's body crashed into a nearby wall and fell into an undignified heap. The remaining genin locked eyes with the terrifying, monstrous-looking, and cruel young boy 4 years younger than him. His entire being was telling him to run away and escape at all costs, but the look in the younger boy's eyes dared him to run. It dared him to escape from him. The last genin did the only thing he believed he could. He smashed his head against a wall and fell unconscious. But little did he know that this only enraged the young legendary Saiyan even more. He went and grabbed each boy that threatened him and ultimately disappointed him and then stomped, smashed, kicked, and punched each boy until they screamed, begged, and cried, and fainted again. "Foolish worms are begging for an early grave by even thinking about threatening me." Broly left the three broken, bruised, and unconscious boys in the middle of the destroyed street. Suddenly a black figure appeared where the once raging tailed demon stood and gathered the three boys and took off with them. The next day after the academy. "Aomatsuna-kun, are we gonna practice those jutsus again today?" Esumi asks nonchalantly. "Eventually, but I have to do something else before we go into the forest." Broly responds. "Where are we going first?" Jaby asks. "To a dango shop." Broly says. Esumi visibly brightens up at this and is excited for some reason. They arrive at the dango shop and Broly walks up to a trench coat wearing woman with mesh armor on underneath, leaving almost little to the imagination. Causing Jaby's face to redden at the sight of it. "Esumi, ask her about chakra control exercises." Broly commands. Esumi nods and puts on her innocent cute child face before walking towards the woman. "Anko ne-chan, I wanted to ask you about something." Esumi says while twiddling her fingers behind her back and looking down at the ground. Anko takes a moment to stop eating the dango in her hand and looks at the familiar blue-haired shorty. If it's about boys, always remember to spend their money before you break up with them. Anko says nonchalantly. What? No. I wanted to know about chakra control exercises. Esumi states why would an academy brat like you need to know about that? Shouldn't you be learning about flower placing or something like that? Anko questions in a lackluster manner. The academy is so lame. I learned most of the stuff the academy teaches by the time I was 7 in the library. Look at you little nerdy brat, I have to tell ya though the boys aren't big on nerds. Anko warns. I don't care about catching the attention of boys. Just tell me the exercises. Esumi yells, calm down girl brat and tell your 2 little boyfriends to come over as well. Esumi while angry just nods towards Broly and Jaby and they both come over. Jaby, red in the face and Broly just blank as usual. Okay tell the me reason why you brats need to know and if I like it enough I'll tell you one exercise. If I really like it I'll tell you too. Anko says with a mischievous smile on her face. Esumi and Jaby just look at Broly before he looks at Anko in the eyes. I can't perform the clone jutsu from the academy. Broly says. Anko smiles even harder causing some slight irritation to appear on Broly's face. Ooh our village's monkey prodigy doesn't know as much as he seems. Anko says insultingly and teasingly. Broly's irritation only grew. It would be best if you did not try to anger me thoughtlessly. Broly warns. Oho and what will ya do to me brat? Are you gonna smash me up like you did those 3 genin on the street last night? At least be a bit softer with me than you did with those 3. Anko says in a seductive voice, only serving to enrage the young Saiyan boy even further. Tell me the way to increase my chakra control or I'll force it out of you myself woman. Broly threatens. Anko's face turned from goofing around to suddenly serious. I want to see you try monkey brat. Anko baits. Broly's lust for battle surges and Esumi and Jaby take a couple steps backwards and take out their weapons just in case things get bad for Aomatsuna. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The next part will be out soon.